The Obsbot Tail 2 is that kind of camera that can make your life much easier both as a videographer or content creator, especially if you work as a one-man band videographer or you need to film yourself with dynamic shots where the camera is going to follow all your movements. The Tail 2 is a PTZ camera with AI tracking features. It has a 50 megapixel sensor and it has an optical zoom range of 5 times, but you can also digitally crop within that 50 megapixel sensor to reach up to 12 times zoom range. This camera is also loaded with a lot of ports and it has a Bluetooth and Wi-Fi 6 connectivity. In this video I will focus mostly on the physical design and the optical performances and image quality of the camera. The body of the camera feels well built, it is made out of strong plastic, it is lightweight, but it's not weather sealed. It weighs 1 kilogram, but considering that we have a 5-time optical zoom lens and a big 5000 mAh battery inside the camera, the weight is actually pretty good. The battery can power the camera for 4 hours while recording 4K, and the charging time is going to be around 150 minutes if the camera is turned off. In terms of ports and connectivity, this camera seems like a dream camera. It has a lot of ports that are pretty useful. For example, USB-C for charging, USB-C for data transfer, a LAN PoE port, a SDI 3G port that is able to output a Full HD video, an HDMI port that is able to output up to 4K. Then we have in and out RS232 ports. And for the audio we have a mic in and line in. As you can see on the side of the camera we have 2 ventilation systems that keep the camera running for a long period of time without suffering the problem of overheating. On the right side, on top of the ventilation grid, we have a micro SD card slot where we can record our footage up to 4K 50 fps. On the front we have the LED indication status where you can see the battery percentage of the camera, where each indicator means that the camera is having 25% of remaining battery, and in this case having 4 full LEDs on means that the camera is fully charged. On the bottom of the camera we also have a 1/4 inch screw mount where I attach the plate of my tripod, and it is important to note that this 1/4 inch mount is made out of plastic and not made out of aluminum. The upper part of the unit is going to be the gimbal with the camera on top of it, and we have a LED status here in the front that is communicating what type of connectivity we are running and if we are recording or if we are tracking the subject. And on this axis of the gimbal we have a tally light that we can decide if we want to keep it on or off while recording. All this block here is where we have the sensor and the optical zoom lens, and as you can see it's pretty big. And it's almost as big as a can of beer, just slightly shorter. And a very cool thing that you can notice in this camera is this lens behind this protective glass, because this camera is able to switch from horizontal to vertical recording option just rotating the internal block of the camera. So in this case I'm filming horizontally, but like if I wanna switch to film vertically, this entire block inside with the sensor will rotate by 90 degrees. And that's pretty fantastic because you don't have to create crazy rigs if you need to record vertical content. If you're wondering where is the microphone capsule in this camera, unfortunately we don't have one. This camera can only record audio just if we plug a mic in or line in signal. And I feel a bit sad about it because I loved to have a scratch audio recorded inside the camera that was making my life easier to sync all the camera in post when I was recording multicam sessions. So in this camera I'm forced to always attach a directional mic or a wireless transmitter or a timecode generator to be able to sync all the cameras in post if I am recording multicam setups. And as you can see in the body design we don't have a cold shoe mount where we can attach a microphone or a transmitter, and that means that we probably have to glue a cold shoe on the left side of the camera to keep the system minimalist, because if you want to use a camera like this, it's because you want to be minimalist. Talking about the lens, we have an optical design of 12 elements with a 5-time zoom range that is going from 22mm to 110mm, but we also have a variable aperture that is going from f1.8 to f3. In terms of optical performances, I'm pretty satisfied with the performances of this camera. It is sharp enough, it suffers a little bit from chromatic aberrations, and it suffers a bit from flares if you have both wide to the telephoto zoom range and the tonalities of the flares are changing, so you're gonna get more of a purplish warm cast if you are on the wide until 50 millimeter, and if you go from 50 to 110 millimeter, you're gonna get more of a green cast if you have a very strong source of light like the sun hitting the sensor. In terms of autofocus speed, I would say that this camera is just sufficient. It's not the best performer I ever seen, especially if you are doing the tracking with the optical zoom enable in case you want to frame the subject in a mid region. In that case, when the camera is zooming in or out, there are moments where the autofocus is losing the subject, and that's a bit annoying. And so I won't really trust this camera for very dynamic shots where you have to track someone coming forward or going far away from the camera, because the autofocus tracking is hunting a little bit. But I think this can be fixed with a firmware update, so maybe come back and check in the comment area below if this problem has been fixed or not. Talking about the sensor, having a 50 megapixel sensor means that this camera should be able to record in 8K. But this camera is able to output just 4K. So I think that the camera is using line skipping or pixel binning to be able to record in 4K. And that means that we can potentially see some problems of moire or aliasing in case we are filming some fine details. On the other side, having 50 megapixel sensor is pretty helpful in case we need some extra reach. So that means we can crop into the sensor while retaining the same 4K resolution. In my case, I wouldn't use this camera further than 8 times zoom range because I noticed some image quality degradation above that range, but in case you need to zoom very close to your subject, there is the possibility to reach up to 12 times zoom range while keeping a 4K resolution. The pixel size of the sensor is 2 by 2 nanometers, and we have an ISO sensitivity that is going from 100 to 6400 ISO. The electronic shutter is able to record up to 1 of 8000, and that means that we can also film in pretty bright environments, but you can also purchase separately the ND filters to keep the motion of movements around your scene natural. The camera is able to record in 4K H.264 or H.265 with a maximum bitrate of 160 megabits per second, and you can also record in 4K up to 60 FPS. But what about low light capabilities? This camera is now filming during blue hours, and it looks like the footage is pretty clean. The dynamic range is what it is, but I mean, considering that we have 1/5-inch sensor size, we cannot complain. Talking about the image quality, even if you have a slightly larger sensor, I can say that it looks very much like the footage captured by the Obsbot Tail Air. The main advantage of the Tail 2 over the Tail Air is that this camera is having a dual base ISO, so it's going to provide better image quality if we increase the ISO to higher levels. So if you plan to film in low light situation, this Obsbot Tail 2 is going to be a best buy for you. I've tried the camera in very dark environments and the image quality seems pretty usable to me. There is a lack of details if we use higher ISO values because there is also a denoiser being applied to the footage. And don't forget that if you zoom in to 120mm, the image is going to get darker. So if you want to have the best low light performances with this camera, it's better to stick with the 22mm equivalent to retain the f1.8 aperture. The dynamic range of the camera feels a bit limited to me because I'm used to work just with full frame cameras that have like 14 stops of dynamic range. So there is a big difference between this camera and the full frame cameras we are used to work with. Next to this dynamic range limitation, we only have 8-bit recording options without log picture profiles. We just have an HDR option that doesn't really look like a true HLG picture profile with a true 12 stops of dynamic range. So if you're working in a multi-cam setup and you need to use different cameras within your setup, matching this camera with your other cameras might be a bit challenging in post-production. So I might suggest you to just consider using a bunch of these Obsbot Tail 2 in your multicam setup to have a better and easier life in post-production. This is how the internal audio preamp is sounding. While now we are listening to the audio captured by the Rode Wireless Go 2 that is using a 24-bit recording option. What do you think? What sounds better? In upcoming weeks, I will make a video where I show a multicam setup using the Obsbot Tail 2 with the Obsbot Tail Air, the DJI Pocket 3 and my Lumix S cameras, together with the Obsbot Talent. So you can see all together how these cameras are looking and if this camera is going to match in your workflow. All in all, considering the amazing features packed into this tiny camera and having an optical zoom range that is very versatile if you work as a one-man band videographer, this camera is worth to consider, especially if you plan to live stream and record your video sessions at the same time. Anyway, if you have any question, feel free to ask in the comment area below. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao!